So over to you, Nigel.
Yeah, Janet, I'm just going to mute everybody because we've got a lot of unmuted people, and then if Nigel can unmute himself before he starts, just it'll keep everything quiet in the background.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Lucy.
Okay, that's done. Okay.
Shall I get going? Yeah, of course. Right. Given I could talk for days on this, what I'll do is I'll focus in on the day one and why the approach I took was the successful approach in stopping drinking. So basically, just a very quick elevator sort of pitch on who I am. I'm Nigel. I'm 56. I stopped drinking when I was 54, two years and a bit ago. And I'd been drinking probably the best part of 35 years, from ages 17, 18, growing up in Cardiff in South Wales, leaving there at 18 and going to university in London. And I suppose landing in London in October 1984 at the age of 18, with a student grant, that just became like a party season for me. And in those days, you know, you got grants and you didn't have to pay for your education. It basically was just going out every night and drinking. And it was just what everyone did. And that's just the way it was. And I suppose what I didn't do was I didn't stop after university. I just carried on going because I went into a profession which was journalism, and then after a few years of being a journalist, into public relations, which is the other side of journalism, and the advertising world. And that is just basically drink city. So in those companies, if you don't drink, you just do not progress anywhere. Well, it was like that anyway in the late 80s and the 90s. So alcohol sort of got woven into my life. And in my 20s, I didn't really look at it as a problem because I was young, virile, and really didn't care about it. It was fun. It was sort of, I'd been indoctrinated, obviously, into believing that that was the way to relax, and that was the way, you know, you did business and you did your social life. And getting into 30s and getting married and having children, you know, it was in the back of my mind, you know, that this was wrong. I needed to change. But I really didn't believe that I could change. And there were loads and loads of limiting beliefs that I stacked up on this sort of ambivalent seesaw, as I call it. So because alcohol is one of these huge ambivalent things that, you know, you can say it's fun and relaxing, and on the other side you can say, well, actually it causes anxiety and it leads to depression and it sort of leads to lots of deaths, and there's always a good and a bad argument. But the reality is it is bad, but I didn't want to see that for many years. And for me, this sort of got interwoven into my life. And towards the end, throughout my 40s and early 50s, I probably got up to a bottle of wine a day. And that was, you know, it's not a great deal compared to, say, some other people, but to others, it's massive. And it really was a mixture of, you know, a couple of glasses of wine that led to the whole bottle. And then maybe there was another glass as well. And then on the weekends, it would be the same and a bit more. And that really starts to stack up and just become an absolute nightmare when you're in your early 50s. And so I'd wanted to stop drinking thousands of times. I'd given it a go from the age of, say, 30 onwards. So maybe for 25 years, I'd failed at stopping drinking. The longest I went was 6 days twice. And then I rewarded myself with a beer because I'd made it 6 days. So it was crazy. You know, it was almost like I was locked into this prison of thinking, of limiting beliefs that alcohol was good and I could never get out of it. I could never escape from it. And what I was doing wrong, I learned that because of the thousands of times that I'd failed, that I'd learned that really I didn't believe that I was a non-drinker. And so on the day that worked, at the first day of the successful attempt, I actually decided that today I'm just going to click my fingers and I'm going to be a non-drinker, as if I'd never drunk before in my life before. You know, it was almost like, I'm going to do this. And it was almost like this sense of elation and an inward smile that, yeah, I'm a non-drinker. Of course, there was the belief that the wolves coming into my head going, no, you're not really, no, you're not really. But I told myself so many times to fight that wolf back that I was a non-drinker. So I use this analogy that there's this mountain, and every attempt I'd made before, I was like looking up at it and I was thinking, I've got to get up there where the non-drinkers live. And it never worked because I could never get to the non-drinking place because in here, I was still a drinker. So, but now, December the 8th, 2020, I actually 100% believed, let's say 99% believed that I was a non-drinker. There was still that wolf. In fact, if I'm really honest, maybe 95% believed I was a non-drinker and a 5% wolf sort of saying, you're still a drinker, you're still a drinker. But it was easier to actually combat that wolf because I really, really changed my beliefs about thinking I am now a non-drinker. So when you have this perception, you're at the top of the mountain, it's a lot easier to become a non-drinker because you're already there. You don't believe there's this huge struggle to get there. And if you fall slightly, i.e. one of the wolves goes, go on, have a drink, you're only falling down a little bit off the top and there's only a little bit to just get back up there. Whereas if you're always at the bottom, you're always like looking up at this huge, huge journey. So for me, that was what I did. In the back of my mind, I actually believed I was a non-drinker and I was going to have fun being a non-drinker because non-drinkers were healthy and non-drinkers had fun and they enjoyed their lives and they didn't have sleepless nights and get up in the middle of the night to go to the loo and were stressed out or maybe find themselves in A&E with a panic attack, which is things that happened to me. And so the first month was really about just reaffirming with myself and using psychological skills, which I'd learned from podcasts and just reading quit literature, that I knew I had to go on a mission to fully shut the door on alcohol and really, really 100% believe I was a non-drinker because I'd started as a non-drinker and I didn't want to fall back into being a drinker. And really what I did very simply, and it sounds simple talking about it like this, was I used mindfulness and meditation to actually try to find the spaces between my thoughts, to try to get rid of the go on, have a drink at 6 o'clock. Alcohol's good for you. You know, it relaxes you. Everybody does it. Everybody at work does it. You won't get on in work if you don't drink. You know, all this crap, the voices that you continually tell yourself, I decided they were rubbish. They were virtual reality. I'd made them up. And this is really important because all those thoughts buzzing around your head are not real. They're just your dictation of what you think reality is. And if you get into that, and I know it sounds easy just saying it, but if you take a step out of your thoughts and look back and say, actually, this is just rubbish. I've been telling myself this for 35 years and it's crap. What am I doing here? And if you find the space in between those thoughts, which is really what meditation is all about, it's like looking at the thoughts, realizing, seeing them for what they really are, and then finding the space so you can actually generate and promote the new thoughts that alcohol is bad. I'm a healthy person. What do healthy people do? You start to build up and transfer messages across to your unconscious mind that you are actually a non-drinker. And once your unconscious mind buys in, then you're in. You've done the job. And I think for me, I was still getting cravings probably up to 6 months after I stopped. But they really, really started. They were huge in the first few days, but then they got less and less and less and less. And by the power of this thought process of continually telling myself that I was a non-drinker, I actually, in the end, started to believe my new reality, virtual reality, call it whatever you want, but I am now a non-drinker. And it actually worked. It sounds so simple, but what I was doing was I was making very small changes on a daily basis that added up to the massive change. And I set myself 3 daily goals, and that they were to not drink today, to go for a walk each day, and on that walk, meditate, to try to get into my head and train my mind muscle, as I call it. So I looked at meditation up until this point, I really didn't not understand what meditation was. I thought it was a bit woo-woo and a bit, it's something that you had to cross your legs and sit in a place with like candles and incense burning. And I didn't get it at all. But then I started learning about it. I dropped my guard. I dropped my limiting beliefs about it. And I really understood what this powerful thing is all about. And for me, those 15 minutes each day on those walks, if you do that for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, it's like going to the gym and building your biceps. You build your mind muscle. You get calmer. You're able to see the space between your thoughts. You're able to identify bullshit limiting beliefs when you see them. And you're able to cross stuff into your unconscious mind of the new you, the new values that you stand for. So there's a lot going on here. So basically, very simply, I'd set myself 3 daily goals, which I think put me on a trajectory. So even though after day one, if you just did 1 day of those goals, nothing would happen. But if you did them every day for 6 months, you would start to go on this trajectory towards the moon, or your big goal, which is become a healthy, fit, new person who just doesn't think about alcohol one iota. And this is what happens if you set yourself a daily simple goal. It puts you on an easy step to going towards your trajectory or your big moonshot. And I read this great thing in the early days, which was called the domino effect. And it basically says that if you have a domino, which is, say, I don't know, 4 centimeters tall, it will knock over another domino if pushed 50% its size. So a 4 centimeter one will knock over a 6 centimeter one. That 6 centimeter one will knock over a 9 centimeter one. That 9 will knock over a 13.5 centimeter one. But by the time you get to domino 13, the domino is the size of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. By the time you get to domino 17, it's the size of the Eiffel Tower. 23, it's Everest, and 57, it's like the domino is touching the moon. And this stuff is so true. So the tiny 4 centimeter domino was going for a walk. The next one was meditating. The next one was getting 7 hours sleep every night. And they just knocked and knocked and knocked and knocked. You know, domino 6 was giving up meat. Domino 7 was, you know, doing 100 press-ups every day. And all of a sudden, you know, these dominoes are going bang, 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 bang. And each one is, the smaller one is giving you the inertia to push the bigger one over. And so this domino effect really uses the geometric force in physics. And that happens, it can happen in your life as well. With simple daily goals, the domino effect kicks in and sends you to the moon. And this is really what happened to me. And I now use it for everything in my life, for my business, for my goal setting, anything. It works. And so that was going on the bigger picture. On the lower sort of micro side of it, I was really getting into Buddhist philosophy. And there was this fantastic Buddhist sort of philosophy which said that the power of intention, it basically says, for what you intend to do becomes the deed. So if I intend to drink, I'll have the drink. The deed becomes the habit. If you do enough of the deed, you'll get a habit for it. And then the habit, if you carry on with it, becomes your character, and then your character leads to your destiny. So if you take that back and you unpack it, the intention that leads to all this in the first place is basically made up of your values, your beliefs, and your purpose in life. You will not intend to do something unless you have the values to do that, or you believe that it's right. So therefore, going into the nucleus of these intentions and changing your value system and changing your belief system by writing down, what are my values now? What are my beliefs now about alcohol? What are my beliefs about myself as a healthy person in 10 years' time? Where do I want to be? Let's not wait 10 years to actually have those values. Let's have them now, today. Click your fingers and actually, I've got them. And that's the only way you do it. That's the only way, in my view. So I was a healthy person. What do healthy people do? They don't drink. They probably, they don't go to fish and chip shops, not that often. They don't eat like lots of pizzas and all that sort of stuff, which when when you drink alcohol, you get into that. And because you have the values of a drinker and the values of the drinker. And I don't really care. I like relaxing and getting out of it and doing whatever I want to do. So, but I wasn't that anymore. So by taking that sort of Buddhist psychology, linking it to the daily goals, the whole thing worked. And there was this other great thing that in my book, one of the first line on the first page is this quote from Thoreau, the American philosopher. And it basically is from a book he wrote called Walden. And just a bit of background on Thoreau. He lived in the 1840s in New York City. And he was stressed out by the pace of life in New York in the 1840s and decided he'd had enough and he was going to move out to the sticks, to the woods, and build his own house in a log cabin and live off the land. And he wrote a book called Walden, because where he built his log cabin was called Walden. And he said this fantastic thing. He basically said a footstep on the earth will not create a pathway. It won't create a pathway in the forest. You have to have many, many footsteps over time that will create that path through the forest. Similarly, one thought in your mind will not create a new thought process in your mind. You have to think the same thing over and over and over again. And just like that pathway appears in the forest, that pathway will appear in your mind. And that just like blew me away. I mean, I was listening to that on a podcast by Tara Brach, who's a US psychologist. And it just was like a light bulb moment. I just thought, Jesus, let's go and create some pathways in my mind, Nigel. If I actually think the same thing over and over and over again, I'm going to get that pathway. And really, that is what neuroscience is. It says that things wire together, fire together, and really, that is so simple. Let's not make anything difficult to learn about this. And I just thought, God, that's it. It's really, really easy. And then I decided, right, I have to write a book on this, because after 35 years of dismally failing to stop drinking, I'd actually learned myself how to do it. And I thought, right, I'm just going to bang all this into a book and share it with everybody. And that became my journey, I suppose. And it became reinforcing for me to write all this down as well. And when I wrote it down, it actually almost like journaling, it actually was very powerful coming back. And I believed it even more. And then I then thought, right, what am I going to do? I've sort of not had enough of my career in marketing and advertising, but I wanted something different. And so at the age of 54, 55, I thought, right, I'm going to now become a well-being author, and I'm going to retrain as a coach. And that's what I did. And now I'm on the start of this coaching life that I have. And it feels so much better than being in the ad world, where actually I'm doing something that helps others get out of this prison of booze. And really, I'm just such a big advocate for alcohol-free living. So I've probably talked too much, but that's the story. So
thank you, Nigel. Thank you. That was very inspirational. I'm just going to stop recording.